Yo, 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 yo. What's up, all you burners, stoners, and potheads? This is Weedman 420 with the Weedman 420 Chronicles. How are all you vipers doing out there? Mrs Weedman.
Mr. Weedman.
How the hell are you?
I'm a little under the weather, but I'm doing all right.
But you made it to the show.
I'm here. I might be coughing tonight. I might be sniffling. Maybe a nose blow. But I'm going to do my best.
You got it. Hey, everybody out there in the world. Hopefully you're smoking some big fat doinks while you're listening to the show. And we're about to get a little normal here. And we're smoking some blueberry sangria that was given to us by our friend Big Earl. Mrs. Weedman, go ahead and light that up. And I'll tell you a little about blueberry sangria. It's an indica dominant hybrid. A delicious hybrid with plenty of soothing effects. Blueberry sangria is a great choice for any indica lover. Like its namesake, adult beverage Blueberry Sangria packs a sweet and fruity, sugary flavor with touches of spiciness and a hint of grassiness. The aroma is just delicious with a fruity grape berry overtone, accented by spicy earthiness and hints of fresh grass. The sangria high will settle in a few minutes after you finally exhale, beginning in the head with a lifted sense of happiness. A feeling of full-bodied calm comes next, washing over you and settling into your limbs with a lightly weighted sense that soon turns into heavy couch lock.
Ooh.
This combination will soon turn sedative, leaving you sleepy and dozing off before you know it. With these effects, it's around between 24 and 26% average THC level. Blueberry sangria is often chosen to treat patients suffering from chronic conditions such as chronic pain, insomnia, muscle spasms, or cramps, inflammation, seizures, and spasticity. The bud...
I've got spasticity. I can't even say it.
This bud has tapered, conical, light green nugs with thick, long, light orange hairs and chunky, bright white crystal trichomes. Effects: calming, happy, relaxing, uplifting. Chronic pain, relieves symptoms of chronic pain, cramps, inflammation, insomnia, muscle spasm, seizures. Flavors: fruity, grassy, herbal, sour, sugary, sweet, and woody. Aromas are earthy, fruity, spicy, sugary, and woody. I have to say, we smoked this last night for the first time, and it got me. And I mean, I smoked a lot last night of it, but I was pretty much zooted, faded. Mm-hmm. It got me. It gave me a little bit of the shivers too, which I haven't had in a while. I had the shivers.
And that lasted a bit for you.
For about an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lasted, I mean, I drank some cold water. I took nice fresh breaths, but it did give me the shivers for a minute. Dropped my blood pressure pretty good last night. But I will have to say I was very relaxed. Mm-hmm. Didn't feel any pain. I love it. I like it. I'm just not smoking as much for the show, but I did. I mean, we smoked a lot last night of it, and it was a new strain. My body wasn't used to that new strain.
Yeah, we had already taken an edible.
Yeah, that's true too.
Had hit a couple other things early in the night. I think we were puffing on something. I think I was puffing on my pen.
Yeah, and I'm using a glass filter right now, so I don't get sick because you're not. You're feeling
cooties.
I don't want cooties, so I'm using a glass filter over the filter just so I don't get. And that might have got me even more because if you look at the glass filter, it fills up with a lot of bud. It's a pretty good sized glass filter. So besides just hitting a normal joint, I'm getting that much more smoke.
Ooh, you're going to get zooted.
Not for the show. But
I might.
It is very good smoke. Very good high. So I highly recommend Blueberry Sangria if you can find it out there in the world, either to grow yourself or buy it at a dispensary or somebody you know who grows it and sells it. So, but I would like to say I had a very, very, very nice Labor Day weekend from Friday all the way till Monday when I recorded the Grow Hour.
We had a great weekend.
It was amazing. Friday was great. We had some people over Friday to relax and smoke a lot of weed. Saturday, we went to the beach. Yep. Just the two of us and Yuki. And I have to say, this dog amazes me. She was loving the water again. And this was different than the lake. We went to Lake Michigan. This is different than the little small lake we went to. She went right in the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
Loved it.
Just at a regular beach.
Just regular beach. Yeah. Loved it. She dug a hole that you couldn't see her anymore.
She dug so many holes. There was this little boy who said he was super afraid of dogs. He was kind of planted with the family that was sitting next to us, but his mom was kind of down a ways. But he hung out over by us for quite some time because he
Most
ended
of the
up
day they were there.
yeah, he ended up really loving the dog, and they were playing catch together and playing ball, and he was trying to get the dog in the water. Yeah, she had a good old time, and he was counting all of the holes. He was like, "What is she doing?"
9 holes. He counted, and the one that the deepest was right in front of our. We brought a little half tent, so we can stay out of the sun most of the time. And she dug a hole right in front of the tent, and you couldn't see her.
Yeah,
that's how I would say. What was 3 feet, 4 feet deep?
She was like right at the top of her back was at ground level.
I would say it was like 3 feet deep. She dug a hole.
She was just digging away,
and then she just laid in it. And she dug like a ledge, and she hung out towards the ledge so the sun wouldn't hit her and kept herself cool. What a smart fucking dog! Never taught her that. No, none of us ever taught us that.
Well, her digging was mostly because she'd dig a hole, and then the sand was dry, so it would start crumbling on the sides, and you could just see in her face like, what the fuck, what the fuck, man? So she'd dig like crazy, and then she'd stop. And it would happen again. And you could just see her getting so annoyed. It's freaking sand.
So good. So good.
It was great.
But the fun thing was, besides digging and playing ball, was we finally let her off the leash, and she went out in the water on her own and swam.
Yeah, she was having a good old time.
Like swam out and then would turn around and come back.
From the shore. Because last summer when we were taking her to the beach pretty regularly, she wouldn't go beyond the rock. The lake shore is kind of sand, and then this lake is said to have a tide, and so there's kind of rock, like a row of rocks, and then there's another row of sand, and then the water's edge is rock.
Yep.
And then you have to walk on rocks, and then they're soft like river rocks, but then they drop off, and then it's a clear sand bottom. It's super nice, but it gets probably to about 3 foot deep really fast.
Yeah.
And so last year she would never go past that break. She would just, where the rocks ended was as far as she would go. And by the end of the day, when we were at the beach this year, she was launching off of there and swimming, like full on swimming. And she was just loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cute. One time we were like, hello.
Come back.
Come back.
I had to keep on calling her back.
The water's cold. I don't want to go all the way in.
Yeah.
Please.
And then the crazy thing is that we bought two tubes, and you were pulling her around the water. She's just laying in the tube.
She would climb into the tube. It was like a mesh bottom raft, and she would climb into it and like chill out. She looked like a little queen.
And you would just walk with her, holding. You put her leash to the
on the
tube,
handle,
on the handle, and you would just walk around with her, and she would just lay la 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 la.
She was just having a good old time.
She had a blast at the beach. It was amazing.
It was great.
So just I love having a water dog.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. So she does keep you busy though. But the young boy that was hanging out with her the whole time kept her busy, so I got to sit down and relax for a little bit. It was kind of nice because all she wants to do is play. So the one thing about going to the Indiana Dunes is you have to be careful with your cannabis consumption.
Yeah, because we were in illegal state. The state is Indiana.
Yes, so
in a national park.
I
wonder if the state does the national park. They have their own laws and rules. Are they different than the state?
Well, there's federal parks and there's state parks.
That was a national park.
So that was a federal park. So that means it's totally illegal to smoke there.
You think? Do you think?
It's 100%. Yeah. It's federally illegal.
Yeah.
And you cannot smoke in any federal property or land. Which is kind of crazy to me because the federal property is owned by the United States taxpayer.
That's what I'm saying. Like maybe they have more lenient rules within the park system.
It's the laws that the politicians we put in the place make them federal land, so you can't build on them. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. But anyway, you have to be very careful there because you don't know here. It was kind of busy, so it wasn't like a few times where we were able to smoke a joint and really puff some clouds. But
this time it was too busy.
We bought our pen. We stopped at we went to Michigan first. Stopped at a Michigan dispensary. Picked up a couple of live resin pen carts, and they were cheap there too, $25. My gosh, for a full gram.
And just like normal resin. Taxes.
Yeah, normal taxes.
It was like 10% sales tax, and that was it. Like the 10% included all the little fees and
It was every 10% flat. It was great.
What did you spend?
I spent $52
and got two 1 gram, full 1 gram cart. Holy cow.
This place was busy.
It was
as
rosin,
fuck.
right?
Live resin. This place was busy as fuck too. busy.
It's part of the Potawatomi
Yes.
Indians tribe, so it's tribal owned, which is really cool.
Jam packed though.
Yeah,
and
they had a band playing outside.
Yeah, they have a consumption lounge outdoors. It was really cool, but priced really well. And it was pretty good. It was pretty good live resin for $25. It was good. Yeah. I mean, it didn't get me like zooted.
No,
but it was nice. It gave me a nice, good high. You know, it wasn't crazy. But then we also bought cannabis drinks with us too. So I was even keeled the whole day. I bought a couple 5 milligrams and a couple 3s. I was good hitting that pen. So just be cautious when you go to a state.
Yeah, be aware.
Yeah, just be aware of your surroundings. You know, kind of go away, move away from everybody. You know. But yeah, fun-filled weekend. It was great. I enjoyed the hell out of it. How about you?
You got to see and hold your birthday baby friend. That was part of our weekend.
Yes, I finally
My
got to meet.
niece and her wife had a baby.
Yes.
And she's a little
peanut.
precious thing. She's so tiny. And she was born on Mr. Weedman's birthday. Yes. So they share a birthday.
Oh, I finally got to meet her.
He got to meet her.
Oh.
And he leaned over her and said, oh, my birthday buddy, we are going to celebrate every year together. And her little hand went like this big stretch, like in front of her face, like, yo, 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 like the John Cena.
You can't see me.
It was super cute.
Birthday buddy for life. Yeah. So, all right. You ready to get the show started now? I'm nice and baked off that. Whew. Thanks, Big Earl.
It's a good thing I've got glasses because I can't see a thing right now. I can't see a thing.
Thanks, Big Earl.
Thanks, Big
Earl. For the
Earl.
blueberry sangria and stopping into town, brother. We love you. We love seeing you and your awesome wife and the dogs get to hang out.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah, and we smoked some joints and we had a good time together. And so thanks for the weed, Big Earl. We appreciate you, brother. Really do. And you got some goodies to take home with them too. So you made a new edible too.
I made a new edible and they got to take some of that.
Yes, you made a peanut butter cup basically.
Yeah.
Infused. But we made very low dose, like I would say like 2 milligrams, 3 milligrams tops. And the reason why I like them because you cut them in tiny pieces and you can eat like 5 of them.
I did like
6 of them.
Maybe 1 to 2 gram doses. Didn't even feel it. Right.
But I ate like 5.
But yeah.
And I felt good.
You're like,
I wasn't like
good.
baked. But Big Earl, I was talking with Big Earl on the Grow Hour yesterday when we recorded. And he was saying that his wife felt great on him.
She likes lower dose.
Lower dose.
Yeah. And she said they were
we
great.
made them for her, specifically low dose for her.
Yep.
But I like it because I can eat 5.
Yeah.
And then the pretzels you made, the chocolate covered dip pretzels.
Yeah, they may have been
Who
1 gram.
cares?
Right.
I can eat a handful. Right. And like say they're 0.5 milligram. I can eat 5 or 6 and enjoy it. And between eating a couple peanut butter cups and that, I'm taking maybe 15, 20 milligrams and I'm good.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
If that.
Yep.
Let's say it's like 12 milligrams, 15 milligrams.
Yeah, just nice.
Perfect.
Chill.
Then I can still go get baked and feel great. You know, so well done. And so Big Earl said kudos on those too. So.
Kudos to you, my friend.
We gave some to T and he's like, can Mrs. Weedman make like 100 of those? And I want 30.
I just want to eat them all night.
And make some that are not infused too. So kudos on a new recipe. It's good stuff. I'm delaying because I'm high, so I'm just doing conversation instead of talking serious.
I keep trying to look at the screen, my monitor, to see what I have to read. Oh, this is going to be a little bit of a struggle.
Well, I talk first, so we're good. So
I'm like dancing too. Like my feet won't stop moving.
It is an indica dominant
zippy
60-40, so you do get a
good.
little bit.
This would be like yard work weed.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I got some. I posted that on Token Tuesday too. One of the nugs that was in that bag. It was a monster.
A bike ride or like a good aggressive walk?
A walk. Yeah, I wouldn't even say aggressive walk, but I can walk on it.
Well, you might feel like it's aggressively exhausting. I need to sit down and look at the sky for a minute, please.
Oh, how about that blue moon last week, though?
Oh, yeah.
That was good.
Bright.
Oh, that was like the closest. That was like that song. What, sing the song?
I don't know.
La Luna.
I know a song about the moon.
When the moon hits your
eye.
Yeah,
like
that was a
declassify that some more.
There you go. That's what it looked like. You could actually, to that moon, that song really played well. And you were singing it when we went out to the park and looked at it.
Yep, I was.
It was a beautiful moon. So if you missed that blue moon, it's not really blue, but it's beautiful. It was big and it was
You see how blue the sky is.
Oh, man, it was crazy. So yeah, that was a good weekend.
I'm out of breath. It's almost like I'm working out and I'm not even doing anything.
Well, I'm going to
Maybe
get
this
going.
is a magical answer. You just smoke it and you feel like you exercised, and then maybe your brain thinks it did.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, boy. Let's go, Mr. Weedman.
What's been going on in a lot of the news right now is the whole rescheduling and the ending of Schedule 1 cannabis being on there. It's been the big talk on it. So what Mrs. Weedman and I are gonna do is really go through the articles that I've picked to talk about, like where we were before this, kind of like where we're gonna, if the DEA gets off its ass and does what it's gonna do, is it the right thing to do? Are we happy at what's going on?
Is it enough?
And then Mrs. Weedman's going to talk a little bit about the history of how we got here, along with what the scheduling 1 through 5 actually really mean. And then we'll read a couple more articles of opinions of the 280E tax. And then Mrs. Weedman's going to give some top cannabis industry executive CEOs opinions. Do they, whatever. But they're the ones that are doing all the lobbying and spending all the money. So how to end marijuana prohibition with regard to the Controlled Substance Act. And this was done by NORML. More than 2/3 of the U.S. states and territories regulate the possession of marijuana for medical or adult use purposes, and 1/3 of the U.S. population resides in jurisdictions where the possession of the use of cannabis is legal for those 21 and older. Under the existing structure of the Controlled Substance Act, there is no federal classification that is able to accommodate the existence of these programs and laws as they exist today. This is because these states' legal regulatory structures were not designed in the manner that was intended to be consistent with the Controlled Substance Act. As a result, they currently operate in a manner that is clear defiance in federal prohibition. So, the mechanics of the Controlled Substance Act, let's just give you list these three. The drug or other substances has a high potential for abuse. The drug or substances has no currently accepted medical use and treatment in the United States. There is a lack of acceptance safety for the use of the drug or other substances under medical supervision. Substances classified in category Schedule 1 have been deemed by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to possess some currently accepted medical uses. These substances also possess varying degree of abuse potential, from high potential of abuse to Schedule 2 to low potential of abuse, as well as varying degrees all the way to 5 that Mrs. Weedman's going to cover. Cannabis is more analogous to substances not included in the CSA. Dietary supplements and vitamins, which are marked as a general wellness product, lack FDA approval. I don't know if anybody knows that. The FDA does not approve any vitamin, anything, which is so weird to me, and thus are not classified in any schedule. These products are regulated by separate specific federal regulations. The Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994. Similarly, alcohol and tobacco are not scheduled under the CSA. These two substances are descheduled. Therefore, state governments and the federal government both possess the authority to regulate these substances. Concerning alcohol, the federal government has established various rules and regulations, such as impositions of a standard warning label on a product with Alcohol Beverages Labeling Act and limitations on how the product may be marked or advertised. The federal government can also enforce prohibitions on the production and sale of certain types of alcohol products, such as caffeine-infused alcohol products. Federal law also provides regulations governing home distilling, prohibited without possession of a federal permit, and the home brewing of alcohol, a maximum of 200 gallons per household per year. The federal, so why can't I grow 200 pounds of weed per year?
Well,
okay. Why can't I grow 20 pounds of weed a year?
Right.
That would equivalent to 20 gallons of alcohol, of beer. Why can't I grow 20 pounds a year?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And give it and bag it and give it to my friends and family.
Yeah, to people who want it.
And just everyone chip in for what it costs. The federal government also possesses the authority to impose excise taxes on alcoholic goods and can impose regulations regarding the interstate trafficking sale of alcohol products, so you can cross state lines. States also possess wide latitude when establishing their own localized regulations governing alcohol productions and sales. For example, states set their own regulations regarding alcoholic goods may or may not be sold. State liquor stores, grocery stores, pharmacies, grocery stores, gas stations, etc., as well as on what days of the week. No Sunday sales like they used to be in Indiana. And even
that's not anymore?
No, I think they did that a couple of years ago. So, or maybe it was it was no sales on Sundays, and I think they finally did.
Before noon.
Yeah, they finally did. And even what hours during the day alcoholic beverages may be sold. No sales after 2 a.m. or no sales before 12 p.m. States possess the authority to raise or lower the legal drinking age of alcohol. States impose their own taxes on alcoholic beverages, and some states also impose a unique limit on the potency of alcohol legally sold in the state. Beer that is no more than 3.2% alcohol. State possesses the authority to ban home brewing. Local jurisdictions, if they wish to, also possess the authority to prohibit alcohol sales entirely. Dry counties. Why marijuana must be removed from the Controlled Substances Act. Normal believes that a similar descheduling option where the federal government and state governments both possess varying degrees of regulatory authority over the production, marketing, and taxation of the product is appropriate for cannabis. They take this position for various reasons. Many states have already established specific statewide laws and rules regulating cannabis production, taxation, and sales. Descheduling provides these states and others with authority to continue to move forward with these regulations while also authorizing those states that wish to continue to prohibit cannabis production and sales the flexibility to do so. Rescheduling is intellectually dishonest. Just as cannabis does not meet the strict criteria of a Schedule I controlled substance, it also does not meet the specific criteria that define Schedule II through 5. As a botanical plant, it currently lacks FDA approval and is likely to continue lack such approval going forward. It also lacks the abuse potentially typically associated with substance categorized in Schedules 2 through 3. Tree. Further, substances in the scheduling categories are only available to patients under prescription of physician, therefore making such a classification inapplicable to cannabis in those states that regulate its adults' use. Rescheduling cannabis will not necessarily facilitate the clinical research. The federal policies in place that make clinical trial work with cannabis more erroneous than it is for other controlled substances, such as the requirement that all source material be purchased from the U.S. National Institute of Drug Abuse, NIDA's University of Mississippi Marijuana Cultivation Program, are regulatory requirements that are specific to cannabis, not to Schedule I drugs generally. Rescheduling cannabis to another classification does not necessarily change the regulations, at least in the short term. By contrast, descheduling cannabis would allow private companies to develop their own specific and proprietary controlled trials, formulations of cannabis, and allow them to legally test these products in FDA-approved controlled trials, with the goal of bringing such products to market. Congress has recently descheduled low THC cannabis plants. In December of 2018, Congress enacted a legislation removing low THC below 0.3% cannabis crops from a jurisdiction of the Controlled Substance Act. This change policy established dual regulatory authority over regulation of hemp to the both federal government and the United States Department of Agriculture and the individual states. Rescheduling cannabis altogether would be consistent with the existing policy in many of the states and federal regulations already established by the policy change. So, I have another article to read, but I'm going to take a sip of water real quick.
They're content heavy.
But does it make sense?
But it's important. Yeah.
Right.
It's important.
I mean, I worked on this all week to really come up with so everybody can get an understanding for this.
Right.
You know, so, I mean, I could have probably researched. I mean, I probably could have went through, like, on this show, literally like 60, 70 articles.
Right.
Like, that's how many articles about this and local news articles and that was on this. It was crazy. It was a big week.
Yeah.
That was the only thing you can find about really truly about cannabis right now. That the stocks, going up because of this. Everyone's getting excited. It's just there's so much like the amount of content just about this alone. I mean, there was stuff going on right now about they're finding in illegally grown weed high amounts of lead and pesticides. That was an article this week that was blown all over the place too. Like 90% of all the illegal cannabis has toxins, and that was big too. It was that. I mean, this and those two were probably the biggest things going on in the cannabis industry right now. Huge. So here's another article. Rescheduling won't end the war on cannabis, but could open a new battlefront if we're not careful. And this is by Marijuana Moment, who I highly respect. Contrary to decades to reefer madness propagated by the federal government, the Food and Drug Administration now admits that marijuana does have accepted medical use. However, reports of the death of cannabis prohibitions are exaggerated. No doubt, the conclusion of FDA scientific review for marijuana's current Schedule I status is a welcome milestone in the federal cannabis policy. We're going to post this. There's a lot to this article. I'm just picking points out here that that this article really captures. So, to be absolutely clear, the immediate benefits of rescheduling to 3 would be an improvement over the status quo, particularly for state-licensed cannabis businesses that desperately need relief from Internal Revenue Code Section 280E, which I'm going to read on another article in a little bit. So this is what a lot of people are talking about, is the code, the Internal Revenue Code 2. That said, there is no contradiction between welcoming the immediate tax equity delivered by Schedule 3 and being cognizant of the other downstream implications of that move, or being prepared to address them, including acknowledging that the potential imposition of criminal penalties under both the FDCA and the CSA is not an improvement over criminal penalties imposed under the CSA alone, since both sets of penalties would apply to cannabis post-rescheduling. So it's kind of shitty. It's not going to help anybody that's in prison by just rescheduling.
Right. Right.
So let's see here. The political reality and the public demands for the FDA oversight and DEA's own marijuana enforcement appetite will grow once the whole plant cannabis products legally cross state lines once marijuana is descheduled. It's also true that the FDA can satisfy the interstate commerce trigger by applying the FDCA to state legal goods well before them, based on both their unlawful diversion and lawful purchases of out-of-state visitors. While rescheduling by itself would not vest FDA with new powers, it would free them to exercise their authority under the FDCA to regulate the state-regulated cannabis industry in unprecedented ways that they were politically imprudent before DEA stepped back from Scheduling 1 designations. It could also prompt more well-capitalized interests to leverage the high cost of compliance with the FDCA's drug regimen and to lobby the Congress to codify such barriers to entry, preventing small businesses and minority and women-owned businesses from competing with them in the interstate cannabis market. Finally, it's telling that some advocates for rescheduling effectively parrot the proposal for an FDCA carve-out, but stop short of demanding an actual change in statute or regulation. FDA can provide further clarity by issuing enforcement guidance that will continue to not take enforcement action against state legal products and activities. Rescheduling may need to be accompanied with additional action to ensure that the policy change achieves the desired outcomes without unintended consequences. If this can be agreed upon, then let's just get to work securing the FDA's commitment to not enforce the FDCA against state operators in statute and not settle for agency guidance that could be rescinded, like the Clo memo. While FDA does not currently exercise its authority to enforce FDCA against state legal marijuana and defers to DEA to police Schedule 1 substances, there's an ample reason to expect the FDA will exercise the authority in the event of any move to Schedule 3 or lower, including descheduling. Through the DEA's authority to enforce CSA won't disappear with rescheduling, DEA is likely to reallocate some of the resources away from marijuana enforcement to the enforcement of criminal prohibition on scheduling Schedule 1 controlled substances. At the time, the FDA is corresponding impetuous to police both explicit and implied health claims about medical and adult use goods under the FDCA will take on increasing urgency as the market for these goods proliferates across the country, just like it did with hemp CBD products. Let's see. Contrast with the FDA's robust enforcement of the FDCA against hemp that's been going on, especially with all the Delta 8 and all the stuff you're seeing that's coming out right now. They're trying to reschedule it, but they can't because of the 2014 and 2018 farm bills. So the FDA CA against hemp CBD products sold in interstate commerce after hemp and hemp cannabinoids were successfully carved out of the definitions of the Schedule 1 and THC through the Farm Acts. So let's see. It's too early to tell for victory lap, even if cannabis is rescheduled by the DEA. My proposal in cannibalism was about improving the results of rescheduling for state licensed operators, consumers, and regulators, and to ensure these historic changes don't reinforce and consolidate existing inequities. The observation and proposal are not intended to attack incremental reform, nor are they intended to discount the tangible benefits of moving cannabis out of a Schedule 1 or to invalidate the desperate need for relief from the IRC. But the writer worries whenever advocates appear to conflate the benefits of descheduling with rescheduling, the former would completely eliminate criminal penalties under 21 U.S.C. 8401 of the Controlled Substance Act, while the latter would not and would add exposure to criminal penalties under the FDCA as well. DEA still has the ability to enforce federal criminal penalties against state licensed cannabis businesses after rescheduling marijuana to Schedule 3. That's pretty big. So there's still much work to be done, even if DEA ultimately implements the HHS recommendation. Advocates and stakeholders must continue to work diligently and expedite toward descheduling and ensure a workable future federal regulatory framework of whole plant cannabis products. Lacing up the victory lap over rescheduling is premature and short-sighted, while federal cannabis prohibition is still alive and well. So, Mrs. Weedman now is going to talk a little bit about how this all happened and why are we here to this day, and then go into a little bit of the schedules so we understand it.
So, I've got the science behind the DEA's long war on marijuana. Experts say listing cannabis among the world's deadliest drugs ignores decades of scientific and medical data, but attempts to delist it have met with decades of bureaucratic inertia and political distortion. Marijuana's placement in Schedule 1 did not happen in a vacuum. Overt racism combined with New Deal reforms and bureaucratic self-interest are often blamed for the first round of federal cannabis prohibition under the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, which restricted possession to those who paid a steep tax for a limited set of medical and industrial applications. Science reared its head within a decade, and in 1944, the LaGuardia Committee report from the New York Academy of Medicine was the first in a long line of official bodies to question the prohibition. The committee found marijuana physically was not addictive, it was not a gateway drug, and it did not lead to crime. But Harry Anslinger, head of the then Federal Bureau of Narcotics, labeled the report unscientific, and prohibition rolled on. The Tax Act's mode of federal cannabis prohibition became illegal in 1969 with the case Larry versus the United States, which found that purchasing a marijuana tax stamp amounted to self-incrimination. The verdict spurred Congress to repeal the Tax Act and replace it with the more comprehensive Controlled Substances Act of 1970. With that, marijuana was placed in Schedule 1 classification in 1971 provisionally, until the science could be assessed. President Richard Nixon saw marijuana prohibition as a way to destroy the anti-war left. According to private recordings of Nixon in the White House as well as statements from his staff, Nixon assembled the National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse, what became known as the Schaefer Commission, to engineer scientific support for cannabis's Schedule 1 placement. I want a goddamn strong statement on marijuana, Nixon said in tapes from 1971. Can I get that out of this domestic council? I mean, a statement on marijuana that just tears the ass out of them. But in 1972, instead, the Schaefer Commission found that cannabis was as safe as alcohol and recommended ending prohibition in favor of a public health approach. By then, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics had merged into the U.S. Department of Justice, where Nixon's ally, Attorney General John Mitchell, officially placed cannabis into the Section 1 classification. So 1972. Nixon's aide, John Ehrlichman, told journalist Dan Bauman in 1994, according to an article published in Harper's Magazine in 2016, quote, "The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be against the war on or blacks, but by getting the public to associate hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did." End quote. Yeah, they sure did. So here's a little bit about the DEA's drug schedule. The United States Drug Enforcement Administration set 5 classifications. Let's break them down. Drugs, substances, and certain chemicals used to make drugs are classified into these 5 distinct categories or schedules, depending on that drug's acceptable medical use and the drug's abuse or dependency potential. The abuse rate is also a determining factor in the scheduling of the drug. For example, Schedule 1 drugs have a high potential for abuse and the potential to create severe psychological and or physical dependence. As the drug schedule changes, like 2 or 3, etc., so does the abuse potential. Schedule 5 drugs representing the least potential for abuse. So these, I'm going to break it down into the 5 and define them, and just know that these are general references and not a comprehensive list of all controlled substances. Schedule 1. These drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with no currently acceptable medical use and a high potential for abuse. Some examples of Schedule 1 drugs are heroin, LSD, ecstasy, quaaludes, peyote,
I'm mad about all of them.
and cannabis.
I'm mad about all of them.
I know, but
except for the heroin. But I'm mad about all those other ones you mentioned.
all right. Well, a lot of people might agree. But hey, how could you even compare heroin and cannabis? Like that alone.
Yeah,
doesn't
they're
even
two
make
totally
sense.
different fucking ways to get high.
All right. Schedule 2. These drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with a high potential for abuse, with the use potentially leading to severe psychological or physical dependence. These drugs are also considered dangerous. Some examples of Schedule 2 drugs are Vicodin, cocaine, methamphetamine, methadone, dilaudid, Demerol, OxyContin, fentanyl, Adderall, and Ritalin. Prescribed drug.
All stuff to kill you.
Yeah. Schedule 3. These drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with a moderate to low potential. So this is where they're talking about moving cannabis. These are defined as drugs with a moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence, but they're still calling it dependence, which it hasn't yet to be proven that cannabis is a habit-forming addictive substance. Schedule 3 drug abuse potential is less than Schedule 1 and 2. Some examples of Schedule 3 drugs are Tylenol with codeine, ketamine, anabolic steroids, and testosterone. Schedule 4 drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with a low potential for abuse and a low risk of dependence. Some examples are Xanax, Soma, Darvin, Darvocet, Valium, Ativan, Ambien, Tramadol. And
all addictive.
Yeah.
Majorly addictive.
Majorly addictive. Schedule 5. These drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with lower potential for abuse than Scheduled 4 and lower. And they consist of preparations containing limited quantities of certain narcotics. Schedule 5 drugs are generally used for antidiarrheal, antitussive, and analgesic purposes. Some examples are Robitussin AC, Lamitil, Modafen, Lyrica, and Perpectolin. So I have to say that it's time to deschedule and declassify. We have to push for reform. Rescheduling is a big move for research, science, and the push for use as medicine, but it does nothing to get people out of jail for cannabis. It does not decriminalize cannabis, and cannabis will remain a controlled substance.
True. Good job, Mrs Weedman.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Bringing it home.
So this is a good one, too. It's about the 280E tax law. The Section 280 of federal tax code in recent case law is applied equitably. The cannabis industry could be sitting on millions of dollars in unclaimed federal tax refunds. The first method, called the 280E asset, is supported by very old case law and recent federal claims court decisions that barred the practice of deductions being recognized as bias. Bias refers to a business owner's investment in a business and the company's investment in its assets. For example, if a taxpayer buys an airplane for $1 million, then immediately sells it for $1.5 million, that's a basis of $1 million and a gain of $500,000. The 280E asset accepts the Section 280E prohibits the deduction of costs that cannot be recognized as cost of goods sold, called COGS. It also says that the 280E cannot prementally disallow the recognition of ordinary and necessary business expenses. Under this theory, the 280E expenses cannot be deducted in the year they are accrued, but they must be allowed as a basis in the business or its assets and recognized on exit when the business is sold, or when permitted under the taxpayer's accounting method. U.S. tax law provides that its costs, such as depreciations, are deducted during the life of the business. You can't recoup them again on exit. Let's see here. There's so much that I'm not going to read. So the marijuana industry isn't well acquainted with the erroneous inflated gains created by the 280E, but it hasn't seen many refunds. If the CBS case holds true for the industry, it means millions in federal tax refunds should be available to companies and owners on exit. Woo, good for them. In claiming refunds, the 280 cost cannabis companies will likely be met by an opposing argument because the IRS can prementally disallow other expenses, bribes, personal expenses, meals, etc. It can permanently disallow all deductions under the 280E. In the CBS case, the IRS made the same argument and pointed to past situations in which airplanes with personal and business use were prementally denied deductions for the personal use portion. Here, the court distinguished those cases as inappositate because they involve disallowed personal expenses. I need Mike Ross here from Suits right now, like just to talk to this in human layman terms. Cannabis companies, meanwhile, pay tax on their 280 costs, and under the CBS case, they still must carry them until exit. So, let's see here. If the law provides an accounting method that allows deductible expenses to be accounted for on the COGS, 280E should not disallow it because the 471C allows the taxpayer rather than the IRS to determine its COGS. It might be the method that allows recovery costs that cannot be deducted under 280E. These are complicated concepts that require the assistance of a qualified tax professional. That said, it appears that the cannabis companies are more profitable than they were previously thought because, under the CBS case, current or historic 280E costs should be recoverable on exit or a component of COGS if permitted under the taxpayer accounting method. So we'll see. Hopefully they get some money back. Now, leading into more of this, we're going to, Mrs. Weedman's going to read from some high executives in the cannabis industry, like CEOs and owners of like the big corporate cannabis companies.
Their perspective.
The ones that have been spending the money lobbying to try to get cannabis not even Schedule 3.
Just descheduled.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got top cannabis experts explaining the U.S. agency's move to relax marijuana laws. Is legalization here Or is this another red herring? In a pivotal move that could reshape the federal stance on marijuana, a top official at the Department of Health and Human Services, or the HHS, has recommended that the substance be reclassified as a Schedule III substance under the Controlled Substances Act. The recommendation was directed to Drug Enforcement Agency Administrator Ann Milgram in a letter dated August 29th, according to documentation obtained by Bloomberg News. Benzinga spoke to cannabis industry insiders to get further insights. It's confirmed. The Assistant Secretary for Health, Rachel Levine, stated in a letter that her recommendation was influenced by an FDA review conducted following President Biden's October pardon of federal offenses for simple marijuana possession. The president, around the same period, had requested the Health and Human Services Secretary and the U.S. Attorney General to review marijuana's scheduling under federal law. Later, Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra confirmed, following the data and science, HHS has expeditiously responded to President Biden's directive to Secretary Xavier Becerra and provided its scheduling recommendation for marijuana to the DEA on August 29, 2023, an HHS spokesperson said. According to The Hill, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre declined to comment on the process when asked about possibly rescheduling marijuana, only noting it is independent and led by HHS and the Department of Justice. If enacted, this change would represent a monumentous departure from marijuana's current status as a Schedule I drug, a category that effectively stigmatizes the substance as having no medical utility and places it alongside high-risk narcotics like heroin. A reclassification to Schedule III would significantly ease federal regulations surrounding the drug, potentially unlocking medical research opportunities and paving the way for banking access for cannabis businesses. Marijuana's present Schedule I classification is a primary factor that hampers cannabis companies from securing bank services, engaging in interstate commerce, and conducting critical medical research. Dozens of U.S. states have legalized marijuana for medical purposes, but the FDA is the sole federal authority that can grant approval for medicinal drug usage across the United States. The reclassification could thus be a linchpin in harmonizing federal and state laws. The push for reclassification comes on the heels of various legislative attempts to decriminalize or legalize marijuana, both at the state and federal levels. It also aligns with growing public sentiment for a more nuanced, evidence-based approach to drug classification and legalization. In an exclusive conversation with Benzinga Cannabis, former U.S. State Senator Cory Gardner said, "I've seen it described as monumental. I've seen it described as a very, very big event for the industry. But while this is a monumental announcement, there still must be congressional action included on things like the Safe Banking Act." TrueLive's Kim Rivers also spoke with Benzinga, arguing that the reduction of cannabis from a Schedule I to a Schedule III is monumental and could have significant practical impacts for our business. But in addition, it's the next very meaningful step from a policy and a perception change as we continue to work to legitimize our industry. Basically, it's saying that, based on scientific evidence and a full scientific review, the FDA agrees that there is, in fact, medical purpose for cannabis, which we have known. This is a long time coming. Rivers added that her company has paid more than $220 million of 280E taxes in the last 24 months. So, we think about what's to come for this industry and the ability for us to have additional funds to invest in the growth opportunities ahead. Then we have Cresco Labs' Charlie Botchtill. This is, quote, "a watershed moment for cannabis. This is something that we'll look back on decades from now as potentially the first official domino in federal reform," end quote. He too agreed that the most significant impact of this would be if cannabis is no longer under the draconian impact of IRS Code 280E. "I think that it's a very important step forward for all stakeholders of cannabis, and that includes people who aren't even in the industry, who have been negatively impacted by cannabis laws," he added. Weighing in on the issue as well was Curaleaf's Boris Jordan, saying, "The last time these markets rallied was when President Biden made a recommendation to the HHS requesting to review this matter." Jordan revealed that insiders had a sense that the process would move more swiftly than public expectations, which initially assumed a 3 to 5 year to a 10-year process like it took for CBD. The HHS department had indicated a timeline for recommendations, he continued, and now it's delivered, a little bit earlier than we thought. In his opinion, this accelerated timeline could be influenced by upcoming elections, suggesting that the ultimate decision on rescheduling could serve as a political lever. Go figure. So the real question is, do they approve it in February? Congress basically shuts down in an election year, he said. Or do they keep this open until September and sign to approve this right before the election to get votes to go up? Jordan remains cautiously optimistic on the issue. And then finally, Benzinga spoke with Verano Holdings' George Archos. Quote, "This is unlike safe banking. This is a process that will go through the DEA. This is a big recommendation. This is a step toward making something happen and moving cannabis to Schedule 3, which changes our entire business." End quote. This is an opportunity for social equity entrepreneurs to finally succeed, he went on to say. They've been stuck in limbo, not being able to raise capital, access banking, etc. So this will change all of that. So the corporate stakeholders seem to think that this is all great, but across the board, in the big picture of things, it's really not enough.
There's a lot of controversy on this right now.
There's a lot of
We'll keep up on it and see what happens. Who knows? I mean, right now it's still not done yet until the DEA. All it is just talk until the DEA approves it.
Yep.
So, Illinois for August sales, $139 million. Out of state was $34 million. So pretty big month. It was a record month from last August, but not a record month overall. July just did 140, and still the biggest month was December of last year. So I mean, but still a good month. I talked about this. There's a vote coming up with Cherokee tribe. There'll be the first legal sale of recreational cannabis in North Carolina, and the vote's coming on Thursday. Now, here's the crazy thing. The federal government now is trying to tell them not to do it, but also now trying to withhold funds from tribes and states that legalize adult use cannabis. So, Chuck Edwards from North Carolina introduced a proposal last week that would withhold some federal funds from the states and tribes that have legalized cannabis for adults. Well, here's what I say about that. And I think I said this on a prior episode. Fuck them. Do it your way. Stop taking handouts from the federal government. Tell them to stick their money up the ass, unless you really, truly need it. But if you can start yourself your own cannabis industry in North Carolina, and it's not even legal there yet, medical, rec, and you got what everybody wants, oh boy, you're going to be fucking busy. You'll blow any amount of money that the federal government's going to give you, and you control your own destiny. I don't know. Do what you need to do. Judge denies bid to stop massive weed recall in Missouri, but it's not over yet, so we'll see what happens. Connecticut, little old Connecticut, just killing it. Recreational weed sales are getting higher since January, $68 million worth, and that's an average of about $9.8 million per month. Good for them. Really good. Maryland, though, did $92 million last month.
Jeez.
And Flower did $55 million, of course. The Queen. Concentrates did $24 million. Infused edibles did only $6.2 million for infused edibles. Wow, that's a big reversal from concentrates that are usually on the lower end. I guess Maryland understands concentrates. Infused non-edibles, 5.2. Shaker trim, 512,000. And then the cannabis plants themselves, $9,000. So it got some home grow. I say this, and I've said it, and I'll say it again. Women will rule the world one day. It's going to happen.
That's right.
So should we start taking your buying power seriously in cannabis?
Yeah, that's what we've got here in this article. The feminine point of view has commanded 2023. Summer tours from Beyonce and Taylor Swift unleashed the spending power of women and created an economic tsunami of value in each city they visited. Barbie smashed the box office, earning over $700 million on its opening week, $1.2 billion worldwide, and becoming the single hottest grossing Warner Brothers film of all time. The cannabis industry data echoes this sentiment. The power of female cannabis consumers is on the rise. For female adults aged 19 to 30, 44% of those surveyed in 2022 in a National Institute of Health funded study said they used cannabis in the last year. 44%. The number of women aged 25 to 54 years old working in the U.S. simultaneously also, here we got, this is cool, hit a historic high of 77.8%. So working women, smoking weed. In June, that statistic came out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Consumers want to buy weed from women. 46% of respondents to a 2021 Weed Maps consumer survey said that they want to visit women-owned cannabis businesses. But the industry's harsh landscape has made progress a challenge. The amount of women-owned businesses isn't quite as high as it once was. In Illinois, it was like female heavy, and then that probably 2019-ish, it just 2020, it just scaled back big time. In 2022, MJ Biz Daily data found just 23.1% of cannabis businesses are women-owned. But women continue to drive the conversation forward, despite the obstacles in the cannabis industry. The revolutionary weed capitalists are tapping into the feminine. A proliferation of women-oriented products, as well as events that offer a glimpse into a new world and a different vibe that has historically driven the predominantly male-centered weed industry. It's safe to say the industry is still a boys' club, says Sarah Aziz, founder and CEO of California-born Sundazed and COO of lifestyle brand Saturdays. In a 2023 national survey, 66% of women stated they hide their consumption practices because of stigma. So their consumption already has a bad reputation, says Aziz, who brings to cannabis a background in luxury hospitality. The female and minority-owned cannabis brand Sundazed is proof that feminine and quality can be synonymous, offering up potent weed from award-winning growers, all in a Barbie pink aesthetic. The founder says she didn't see enough cannabis brands that connected to the luxury world and to be a proper cannabis lifestyle brand. Aziz says Sundazed must fully encompass the lifestyle of the modern feminine consumer. Modern consumers are hungry for more representation. Women made up almost 48% of new customers in the industry in the last few years, and Gen Z women are the fastest growing demographic in the industry. So it's a fact that there are more women consumers than ever before, and it's not slowing down, the founder says. It's important for my brand to appeal to feminine consumers. It's important for women like myself to share our stories so those in my demographic can feel that they have a brand that represents them and that they can connect to its culture, she says. On the other end of the country, Solange Burnett hosts men's sessions in New York City. Burnett is a strategist, creator, and founder of Weed Auntie, and also co-founder and chief culture and community officer of Irvin AI, a data collaboration platform. She is tapping into a more empathetic and nurturing side than is usually seen in the event space. During her experiential marketing events, Burnett often showcases brands that are born of women, queer folk, and people who traditionally don't have the financial capacity to market their products. Says Burnett, I do intentional intersectional experiences that are rooted in well-being. Women may gravitate toward that, but everyone is welcome. Burnett often speaks and consults on brand education, marketing, social equity, sustainability, self-care, sexual health, racial injustice, gender discrimination, and community empowerment. Patriarchy hurts both men and women, says Burnett. We have to get to the root. Men have created it, but are also the most impacted in many ways. Burnett wants to see more opportunities for colored women in cannabis, who she feels may be overlooked by outside investors or existing equity frameworks. For me, not all women are created equally in our society, and especially in our cannabis culture. I've seen white or white-presenting women-owned businesses raise millions, while others can't get an investor to give them the time of day. There are major barriers for non-white women, says Burnett. We are the holders of so much intelligence if they only gave us the opportunity. In 2022, non-white ownership of cannabis businesses went down from 20.7% in 2021 to 15.4%, according to data published by MJ Biz Daily. Those with cultural influence and purchasing power should be reflected in the DNA of your company. The conscious consumer I help to educate or guide go with brands that respect their existence. I'm not going to shop, support, or work with brands that don't want to see this black femme or my people succeed. And with my company, Weed Auntie, I get to lean on those pillars. The founder has some crucial advice for men in the cannabis space. My advice is, do better, she says. The speak first, listen never mentality is harmful to business, community, and the people you serve. Cultivate and seek a team that doesn't perpetuate the circle of sameness or an all-in-the-family nepotistic energy. Go outside of the like-minded and go for like-motivated. Be a hungry human who has a passion for building a biodiverse industry. She advises cannabis brands to stop using current models and highlights that a difference in background and experiences is beneficial to brands. Burnett leans on making people feel valued, respected, and heard. She says, do better and welcome those who are motivated to do the same.
Hell yeah, great article.
Yeah.
Women will rule the world one day. Trust me when I tell you. International news. I got a nice DM. And I don't really go on X or Twitter that much. But somebody that reached out and has been listening to the show from like ever, like from the beginning. So Crons, thank you for reaching back out. And I want to say, welcome to a world of medical cannabis. This human moved from the UK to Australia because the UK is illegal and you can't get even medicinal. It's like next to impossible to get medicinal cannabis in the UK. And moved to Australia to get medical cannabis and was DMing me, thanking me, saying hello, and touring the western part of Australia while this human's parents live in Australia now too, and they've been home growing.
Wow.
2 plants because you can home grow. But threw me a shout out on here and said smoking some sour chocolate diesel.
That's great.
Tastes really nice. Going to send me some other stuff like to see what the weed is like in Australia, you know, compared to here, which is kind of cool. So thanks, Crowns, for reaching back out. Long-time listener. And
that's awesome.
Man, part of the tribe. I love it. Appreciate you. So anyway, international news. This is in Australia, and the haze of cannabis is everywhere right now. And Germany has recently become the latest country to move towards legalizing recreational cannabis, following footsteps of Uruguay, Malta, Canada, and parts of the United States. Even Thailand has begun distributing 1 million cannabis plants to households after dropping it from its official list of prohibited substances. Australia has not been left out. In the last couple of months, legalized cannabis party members in New South Wales, Victoria, and Western Australia have tabled bills to legalize recreational cannabis use at the federal level. And the Greens tabled a bill last month, which provided for registration of cannabis strains and establishment of national agency overseeing a new commercial cannabis industry. So the Australian Capital Territory is showing the way forward. In 2020, ACT passed a law to allow people to possess, use, and grow cannabis. It's now legal to grow up to 2 cannabis plants per person, up to a maximum of 4 per household for personal consumption. We have been studying the experience of these cannabis growers in the ACT. Our research provides important lessons for policymakers across the nation who are considering whether to allow home growing as a legal source of cannabis supply. Yes, you are on the spot on, and our friends in Australia, if that happens, I'm coming. So go Australia, and for all my friends down there, down under, looking forward to meeting you all one day, shaking hands and smoking big fat doinks. Danish mayor urges tourists to stop buying pot on Pusher Street, and they're not liking it because it's causing problems. Terrible. You should have legal cannabis in your everywhere, not just coffee shops. Supreme Court rejects appeal for Vietnamese cannabis grower who wants to stay in New Zealand. Come on, man, let him stay. Let that person stay. Let him grow there. Is weed legal in Europe now? Yes, sorta. No, sorta. Let's see. Even though medical marijuana is gaining increased accessibility in Europe, most EU countries still prohibit personal use. Germany's progression towards potentially becoming a second EU nation following Malta to legalize recreational cannabis could set a precedent for other countries to consider similar measures. Nevertheless, the Board of European Context Cannabis continues to be unlawful in specific EU member states, even those legal consequences including imprisonment for the possession of marijuana. While certain countries are initiating trial initiatives for medical marijuana, which is gradually becoming more attainable through the EU, some experts argue that the European cannabis market has exhibited a slower growth rate than that of the United States or Canada. Pioneers of cannabis. Malta has the most permissive legalization in the EU for cannabis growing use and possession. According to regulations, they can possess up to 7 grams of cannabis and grow up to 4 plants in their homes. Smoking is not permitted in public, though. Let's see. In the Netherlands, it's often perceived as lenient regarding marijuana. The growing, trading, and ownership of drugs remain against the law. The sale of cannabis is merely tolerated within the country's renowned coffee shops and possessing up no more than 5 grams of cannabis. Let's see. Portugal implemented cannabis decriminalization in 2001, whereby the consumption and possession of small quantities are treated as administrative offenses. In Spain, private consumption is prohibited, but partaking in public is considered an offense, leading to fines. Luxembourg, private cannabis consumption is tolerated. As of this year, cultivating up to 4 cannabis plants is permitted. Possession of cannabis in public has also been decriminalized. So, Denmark, for instance, has introduced a pilot program in 2018. In 2019, Ireland initiated a 5-year pilot program. France launched a medical cannabis pilot program in 2021. Czech Republic and Germany, where patients have the potential to receive reimbursement for medical cannabis. There are other countries where the patient bears the entire cost. So, evolving international cannabis legal status, I'm just shocked. So, I mean, how where they're at and where they could be and should be, So, a diversity of policies and attitude makes the landscape surrounding cannabis in the European Union. While some countries have embraced the potential medical benefits and taken steps to decriminalize or legalize its use, others remain stringent in their prohibitions. So, bill to legalize adult use cannabis in Colombia passed first hurdle. Good for them. Let's go. And then in France, medical cannabis in France may be included, or will it be included, or could it be included in the annual budget for 2024? There's a lot of obstacles. There's talk. We'll see what happens, and hopefully it'll become medical in France. It should. So, how do you smoke a joint like a cannabis connoisseur, Mrs. Weedman?
Well, I will tell you. You want to know?
I want to know.
All right.
How to be a baller smoking a joint.
To truly appreciate the finest cannabis flowers, one must smoke a joint. That resonates with me.
You love your joints.
The process of inspecting, smelling, choosing, grinding flower, and then rolling a joint is integral to the smoking experience as much as inhaling, savoring, and exhaling the smoke. This is the mindfulness of smoking. One of the best ways to heighten your appreciation of the magic herb is to host a blind cannabis tasting. Simply acquire 3 or 4 different strains and repackage them into numbered containers. The less information you have, the easier it is to let the cannabis speak for itself. Now comes the involvement of all 5 senses. The eyes don't lie. First is the visual appraisal. Under a good light, describe the overall shape and color of the bud. Notice the length, profusion, and color of the hairs. Is it trimmed well? Is it too shaggy, too tight? Is the bud dense or hard or loose and open? Finally, using a 60-time mini microscope, check out the trichomes and look for clear, cloudy, or amber color. If the stalks of the trichomes have no round tops, chances are the cannabis was machine trimmed or mishandled in some way. Follow your nose. The second is the assessment of the fragrance. Pinch the flower bud and inhale deeply. Now break apart the bud and smell again. What associations immediately pop into your mind? Take your frame of reference from smells outside the world of cannabis, such as the smell of butterscotch or motor oil or dirty armpit, etc. Ew. As you break up the bud, inspect the interior for mold or discoloration. Your fingers will provide a measure of the curing, if it's too damp, too dry, or just right. Now grind up your flower and smell again. I do that. Then the listening party. If you're having a tasting with friends, don't say anything until everyone has had a smell, so as not to prejudice anyone's nose. The fragrance derives from the terpenes, which are volatile organic compounds that give aroma to most vegetative substances. They range from earthy, musty, moldy, and piney to antiseptic, citrusy, lemon, tutti frutti, or blueberry. As judges for the Emerald Cup, one of the world's largest outdoor cannabis events, we look for what they call jar jumping terpenes, the kind that instantly fill your room with the olfactory delights.
It's how you taste.
Yep. Over the years, we've sampled entries smelling like mothballs, moldy rags, new car interior, old sneakers, the high school gym at the end of a game. Ugh. There's also a sweeter range, including suntan lotion and bubblegum, tangerines, strawberries, pineapples, and so on. Remember that it's not about whether you like the smell or not, but just how well it represents that variety. What does it tell you about the flower? The effects of smell and taste are much more profound than we generally realize, so we do linger on them for a while. Now it's time to grind. A good grind of the flower is essential to rolling a good joint. It's just like, grinding your coffee, your beans for coffee. It's essential, right? Now get your roll on. Rolling papers are also important. A clean burn is imperative to enhancing your smoke pleasure, and of course, the less paper, the better. If you're rolling a very thin joint, you would use a 1-inch paper, with a real Swami, while the real Swami joint requires a full 1 1/4. While rolling, make the final assessment of the cure. If there's a lot of dust on the rolling tray, it's too dry. I'm sorry. Yuki's scratching herself next to the table and making something rattle. That was pretty distracting.
Yeah, it was.
Okay. While rolling, make the final assessment of the cure. If there's a lot of dust on the rolling tray, it's too dry. If it's too sticky, it may still be too damp. A really potent bud will feel slightly oily or greasy, not damp. Now, savor the flavor. Before lighting the rolled joint, take a dry hit. That is, take a puff on the unlit joint. Pass it around. Savor it. This is the final judgment of the fragrance. Most often, the dry hit flavor mirrors the smell, sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker. And finally, catch a fire. Now comes what everyone is waiting for, the smoking of a truly high-grade cannabis joint. It will be a journey, a savory, olfactory, gustatory adventure, offering new insights with every succeeding half-inch of smoking pleasure. The advanced way of lighting a joint is with hemp beeswax string. Light the joint like you would a cigar, rotating it to make sure it's evenly lit. Check out the color of the ash. Fine white ash indicates purity. Black ash may mean contaminants. Inhale slowly and carefully, but don't take too big of a hit. Check for your lung expansion. Is it barely possible to hold in the smoke? Exhale slowly through your nose and mouth, tasting, sampling, and smacking your lips. Does it taste like the aroma, the nose, or is it different? Once again, let your imagination go. With free association of flavors, and the name of that taste should be right on the tip of your tongue. Can you feel it? After a few hits, as you are thinking over the flavor, tune yourself into the effect the herb is having on your body. Take a roll of your appendages, a roll call of your appendages. Are they tingly with sensations? Points of heat or cold? What is going on behind your eyes, between your ears, in your neck? Now move on to the metaphysical stimuli. Is it a body stone or is it a head high? Social, giggly, quiet, couch lock, creative, musical, intellectual, introspective, get up and do some chores, get them done? How do you feel? Are you inspired? Combine that inspiration with your heightened sensory, spiritual, and social awareness, and enjoy. and may every joint be a journey for you.
I love that article.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good one. And especially for you, because you love your joints.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Mrs. Weedman.
Mr. Weedman.
That's the end of the show.
Yeah. I'm so stuffed up.
You are stuffed. It's all right. You made it through.
I'm doing all right.
Sick and all.
I'll be better next week.
I wouldn't let her take the day off. Sorry.
No rest.
Too much to talk about.
No rest. Who needs rest?
Yeah, too much to talk about.
Yeah.
We'll get enough rest when I'm in the ground.
Jeez, that's serious.
Everybody out there in the world, we love you. Thanks for listening to the show. We appreciate everyone who reaches out all the time. Another friend I haven't talked to in a long time, living in Australia, getting to grow a couple plants, having some fun. Love it. Love it. So just keep on spreading the word, everybody. Free the plant. Stomp that stigma. We love you out there. As Paulie always says, smoke smart. Puff, puffing away.
Puff, puff, pass.
Check out our cannabis lifestyle brand online at 8decades.com. Our custom smokes and accessories are perfect for your coffee table, bedroom nightstand, or kitchen counter. They're designed for you to show them off. The Canna community is also loving our hemp and cotton blend t-shirts, sweatshirts, scarves, and hats, finished off with our 8 Decades logo. We've got some awesome, long-lasting goods that will be your favorite for years to come. 8 Decades, because a 9th decade of cannabis prohibition isn't acceptable.